Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today is September the 7th, 2023. And I think a lot of people are really starting to feel the energies that something is about to give, that there's a lot of craziness happening. And when I started looking at this, I started to realize that we're coming into September 11th energies, in which we all know that that's a big day for manifesting or causing chaos. So we're back today with our beautiful friend Desiree. We haven't been together for a while. We both have been busy with things, but it's nice to see you back, Desiree. How have you been?
Thanks, Sandy. As you say, I've been busy and
Yes,
talking about they're honestly personal and outside. There is sort of a kinetic energy going on that's actually a little unsettling. And so, we were talking beforehand about how we're going to address self-management too. Yeah.
totally. So when we talk about what's going on with the energies right now, I think it's okay to identify that there's a lot of forces and a lot of agendas at play. A lot of people with different intentions, organizations with different intentions. And as we're waking up, what I'm finding is those energies, when they're put out into the field, we're getting more sensitive to them. So maybe it creates chaos inside because we don't know why we're feeling what we're feeling, or we feel like we're being attacked, or we're really tired. So there's all kinds of things happening, right? But that's what we wanted to talk about today, is to share some ideas with people about what is happening with these energies and how to stay centered in the 0 point. Because when I made the realization that we're coming into the week prior to the September 11th, usually this is Frosh Week in the universities, where a lot of insanity is promoted and offside behavior. So this is a great time for us to practice the skills we have and be able to stay in that 0 point energy and observe without getting triggered. And that's really easy to say. We all get triggered at different times, but it's okay to look at those triggers and see why it's happening, right? And it's interesting because I used to think triggers were just an emotion or an energy or something that happened that hadn't been processed. And I realized that's not the case right now. Sometimes it's an obstacle that's put in your way by somebody else, and it's intentionally causing that trigger to happen. It doesn't, I shouldn't say intentionally, it causes that trigger to happen. Whether it's intentional or not is irrelevant. It's still yours to deal with, right? And look at it and see why you're getting triggered by it and what you can do about it. But so with what's happening, with what's happening right now with a lot of the craziness, we're seeing a lot of ego surface. And that's also what we want to talk a bit about today, is professional egos. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but what happens with these professional egos is somebody might assume that they have a say over what you do that supersedes what their natural rights would be. And an example would be, we're going to watch our language here, I know we are, but certain procedures that they're trying to bring back.
Yeah.
But this time around, maybe people wouldn't be guilted or shamed into going through with something that maybe would have worked in the past. Do you have any thoughts
The
on
guilt
that?
and the shaming. Yeah. And I saw a post recently by somebody. I thought, yeah, that's the way of saying it is they're going, the rumor is that they're going to try to do the use the same things that didn't work before
Yes.
again and say they're going to work.
Yes.
Um, and I think it's just curious that, as an aside, that it's interesting how you can predict a problem before the problem. That's always an interesting one.
Because we're all
Uh,
psychic.
well, I am a little bit, and I didn't see, I'm not predicting that particular problem. Maybe more of a planned problem, perhaps, might be in the works, and that's disappointing. Yet not surprising, is it? So yeah, I think as we've talked about before, whatever comes in, to our space, our mind, our energy, physically or energetically, like you said, it's ours to deal with. It's
Yes.
okay. Now, what do I do with it? And it is easy to react. It is easy to then kind of, it's like I picture sort of like mud wrestling, right? You're walking along and somebody grabs you, pulls you down into the mud. Okay, it's happened, but do I want to roll around and have a fight in the mud, or can I just slip out of there, rinse myself off, and keep going? Okay, so this energetic pull, uh, recognizing that I have a choice to just take a deep breath and walk around that mud puddle or away from that, and allow myself to be centered. What I would love to have you do is, for the people listening and for me, describe what 0 point energy it is and how, what that feels like, what that means, and how you find your way there for
Okay.
maintaining.
So what I see 0 point energy as is the observer position. I see it that you're in an environment and you see what's going on around you, but you're not getting sucked in energetically or emotionally into that environment. So you're seeing what's happening without feeling a need to respond or react or participate. And when you can stay in that higher, it's almost like being in a position with your higher self. Not quite, it's not a full picture of your higher self, but you're observing what's happening around you. And when you're in those positions, you can make choices that you wouldn't normally make, because when you react, it's like you become prey sometimes, that you react, and then it's like when the mouse starts running, the cat wants it or whatever, like there's
Yeah.
a certain behavior. And yes, I do understand that we're in a position right now where we have the control over how we respond, but we have to understand there's people out there who do not have our best interests at heart.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they're in a medical position, they're in a mental health position, they're in a, security or an enforcement position. You still stay in your higher self. You stay in that 0 point energy, and you know how to say, no, thank you. I do not accept. I do not consent. I am not participating. So we have to observe the individual in our own energy, what's happening with us, but we also have to observe the people who we are interacting with. And an example, maybe it's not right for everybody, but maybe in the grocery store, somebody decides you have to wear a face diaper again. How are you going to handle that? Because what's happening right now, this is what I see is happening. I see the darkness is losing, and they're doing a last ditch effort to bring in all the chaos they can so they can harvest our loose energy. That's also part of the 0 point. When you know the game, when you're trying to get somebody's trying to manipulate you or suck you into something, or they're not. When somebody maybe just has poor etiquette when it comes to boundaries, and not knowing when their rights, they don't have
Yeah.
the right to tell you to do something. Maybe their boss told them to do it. It's no excuse. But that's what that 0 point energy is, just knowing that you are in a higher state, that you're observing and not reacting. Now, it's easier said than done, especially if somebody's pushing your buttons. There's a reason they call it pushing your buttons, because it just gets you going, right? But what I try to do, if I know I'm going to go into some place where it might be something might happen, I try to count my way through it beforehand. And the counting I use is I breathe in for a count of 4, and I count 2, 3, 4. Hold for a count of 4, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for a count of 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I feel in my body, where does my
Yeah.
attention want to go? And I might do that 3 or 4 times to get myself centered. And then that way I can move forward and I can stay in that 0 point. So sometimes, so like I said, right now, I think they're going to be harvesting. They're going to really try to harvest everybody like they do in the frost weeks. They get everybody frenzied and drugs and alcohol and everybody having whatever they're doing. They just try to harvest that energy. That's what I think they're trying to do right now, because they're trying to weaponize the date of the 11th. For whatever reason, I don't know why that date is so important, but they've used it before, right? September 11th. So that's what I see is happening right now. Why it's so important that we stay centered. So that's what I see as 0 point, is staying in that that
Mm-hmm.
calm. And it doesn't mean you're not going to be triggered, but it doesn't mean you have to react. You can always, go outside and scream if you have to. So that's what I see as the 0 point. And it's kind of like, it's not the higher self, but it's a gateway to the higher self.
Yeah.
It's part of it that you're relying on your own self to make your decisions, not the ego field that we're all playing on here on planet Earth in 3D. I don't know. Did that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love how you shared that, especially now, for people to consider themselves and what are you doing. That breathing exercise is one of the ones I always teach my clients.
Yes.
Especially anxiety clients.
And
It's
what's
just
good
like,
about breathing, and when you're counting, your mind can't do monkey mind and
right.
count at the same
Yeah.
time. So it can pull you out of fight and flight. It can pull you out of all kinds of things. Sorry, I just wanted to put in the counting, why it's so important.
And it actually changes your chemistry.
Does
It
it?
actually will. It's, better than a pill. It's natural. You have total control. You can do it anytime you want, and nobody can think you're looking weird. Um, and it's, so it's a really wonderful natural way of just reclaiming that moment and pulling your power back in instead of letting it all get sucked away, like you said. Uh, I one of my favorite quotes, I might have brought it up on one of our conversations before, not quotes, but guidance, was Eckhart Tolle. Um, Something that helped me so much years ago was, he said, well, if you're having an interaction, a disagreement, you're being triggered, picture yourself just pulling up out of your body and watch yourself like you're watching yourself on TV. You see yourself, you see the other person, or you see the circumstance. You're just watching. You become the observer, like you say, and watch. And he says in his voice, and he says, and then you see what the person says, and you see what you say, then you see what, and then you say, oh, isn't that interesting? And it always kind of makes me smile. Like, oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, look what they said. Ooh, what are you doing? Hello, Desiree. No, no. Oh, okay. And is this? It helps you step out.
And I
And
like that because
yeah,
this is where we're going in the future because we're really starting to see people's intentions, whether they're good, they're bad, they're indifferent, whether they don't care. And when we start to see, because we're under the false belief that it's all about us, it's not. It's about the interactions wherever we are. But that takes two to tango. And it's like the saying, you can't have one hand clapping, you need two. So those interactions, but that person might be triggering on something, or they might have an insecurity, who knows, or a confusion. But the idea is that, so everything we've been doing up to now is practice. So I like when you're saying that you observe as if you're outside of your own body. But everything we've been doing up to now is practicing because we didn't understand the game. We didn't understand all the foolery and the trickery and the nonsense. But now we're going to get a chance to see it, and it kind of levels the playing field when we see the games for what they are, instead of giving somebody or an organization, or whether it's a department store clerk, the benefit of the doubt. So when we
right.
start to see what's going on, then we've leveled ourselves up, which is also bringing us into the observer position, that we can say, yeah, but no, I'm not doing that this time. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting because people are going to have to do this within their organizations. And we talked a little earlier about professional egos, but here's an
Yeah.
example. If your boss tells you to do something, are you going to do it? And the example we gave was Jordan Peterson. They're making him go in for a re-education, which there should be alarm bells going off in that man's head. And I watched him do an interview with his daughter, and he's actually thinking about going in. And he says he's going to take it and record it, all of their meetings. And I'm like, buddy, you've got to know better, that as soon as you get in behind their locked doors, nobody sees what they do to you. And how do we know what mind control or MK Ultras or whatever they're going to do on him? He doesn't know. So I'm hoping his daughter will talk some sense into him. He has nothing to prove. If they're going to take his license, what's it matter? Because there's no piece of paper that tells one human being what it means to be human, like more so than another human being. We got to get rid of this myth that a piece of paper qualifies somebody to be an
Yeah.
expert. Yes, maybe in heart surgery. Maybe you need an expert when it comes to flying an airplane. You need experts in certain areas, but that is not the sum of who we are as humans. So this is where we're starting to go in, and this is part of stepping into our own autonomy, that we realize that nobody's better at being you than you. And this goes for everybody watching too, right? You stand up and you know you can make the best decisions. And if you doubt your decisions, then you say, okay, well, who am I going to go to learn about this? Like you need a dentist, somebody trained in dentistry to look after your teeth. There's things you
Yeah.
need to do, but you still choose your dentist.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I just drove by my dentist office this week. They're now offering Botox, and I'm like, what the heck is going
No,
on there?
right. I've seen that too. Dental,
I'm
like
like,
every moneymaker possible. So you
I
come out
don't
of the,
know.
that feeling you get with the Novocaine, you could have that full time after you've gone to the dentist.
So it's crazy stuff. But again, but that's also being the observer and seeing, hey, that's the first I've seen of that. Does it mean
Uh-huh.
that there's anything wrong with it? I have no idea. I haven't talked to them about it. I don't know what they're offering it for. I have no idea. But my point is that the observer lets you see things that maybe you wouldn't also see too, and be able to question, is that normal or is that new? Does
or,
that
or
make sense?
yeah, to just step out and go,
Right.
and sometimes I personally, this helps me. I'll bounce it off of friends. If I'm having an issue with a person or an entity or whatever. And I don't mean like an entity, but and I'll describe, oh, this happened, that happened, and then I'll say, is it me? Because I'm always liking to be self-aware that if I'm being off the reservation, off the chart, and not being reasonable, it's like, please tell me. So I'll say, is it me? But this pulling out, immediately I can observe and say, is it me? And also, like you pointed out, is it about me? Like one of the things that's important to think about is like, it's not always personal. It's about the other person, whatever, or the other. It's about them. It's about their ego coming out, and it's not because of you. It's because of them, how they are when they feel that they need to have the control or the choices or the decisions. And you talk about corporations, for example. Whatever feeds their bank, whoever's feeding their bank account, and that's their priority, right? So and most people, it's like, well, I'm going to do it because I'm going to make money. That's how people get blackmailed. That's how people follow rules that are not right. That's how people make choices. And you can draw out and say, is it, am I being unreasonable, or are they being wrong? And this is where it's standing up for yourself, staying in your own personal energy, and also being assertive about what's right for you as an individual. Or speaking of parents and stuff, we've talked a lot about children. What's right for your child? What's right for children in general, or innocence?
So I live in
And
Canada, so and we're not going to have a competition here, you and I. This is going to be fun, but we're not going to have a competition about who's got the worst social policies right now, because I think we both know it's Canada, right?
I think the
But
U.S. is trying to catch up.
yes, I think you are too. But we right now we're leading, right, by about four horse lengths. But what happens right now is there's certain provinces where if your child doesn't want to change or your child wants to change whether they got an innie or an outie at age 3, they can take your kids. So it's not always about you. It's about the structures that are in our environment. And this is part of the old training that I hope to see fall away. It's not always about us. And what I just loved about what you said, you'll go and you'll talk to people and say, is this me? Usually people who say, am I offside here, aren't the ones who are offside, Desiree. I've
Yeah,
never seen
yeah.
you go offside yet, but you're always asking because you're doubting. And it's like, no. And I know some of the relationships you have in your life and people push your buttons. It's not you, right? But they push the buttons because you don't maybe you don't stand up to them, or you don't you're always nice, but they're going to push you until they knock you over or get what they
Yeah.
want, and
And
that's just
it's entertaining to them sometimes. When we
sometimes
talk
right.
about that energy, that it's like, ha 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 ha. How can I really suck up some
And
whatever?
that's
Yeah.
the Satanism. That's also the vampirism. That's that energy where if they can make somebody miserable, that's how they get their emotional fix. And we're starting to see that in people. Not all people are nice, so we're getting past that, right? But when we're talking about the energies, when whether you're interacting with the person, sometimes there's energies happening in the collective right now as well, because there's unseen energies on the astral plane in the different dimensions of energy,
Yes.
but they have negative energy and they want to latch on because they want to harvest, or they want to pull energy out of the people. So sometimes, and I'll use this as an example. I have a client I was talking to. I hadn't talked to her about a year, and she started working with me again. And she started the first day she's working with me, she's having bad dreams and nightmares. I'm not going to say what the nightmares are. And she goes, I immediately thought of you. And she goes, I thought maybe I shouldn't be working with you. And I said, no, they're just doing that because I'm helping you. And they want you not to have the help. They want to harvest you. Right. So she
Mhm.
first thing she thought of was it was me. And it's like, no, they know you're getting help so that they can't harvest you going forward. So they want you to get mad at me. So there's all kinds of things. Does that make sense? There's all kinds of things. It's no different
Yeah.
than two people triangulating. Guess what so and so says about you? And you're thinking, I never said that about anybody. But then they turn that person. So the demons work a lot like the demons work a lot like the physical beings with the egos, that little head games, that like you said, sucking the energy out, right? So things are happening on other planes, other dimensions as well. It comes through the radio broadcasting, through the television. They send signals out. We're seeing a lot of that. The computers, the same thing. But the idea is, as you were talking about protecting your energy, And somebody else has recently come out and said, protect your social media, protect your interviews, protect your images online, and put a bubble of protection around yourself. Even if your videos are a year or two old, put that protection around yourself that people can't send a picture to you. So, okay, this is going to be way, way, way out, nothing we've talked about. So somebody asked me about something that's going on within politics. And I go, I don't care about those people. Like, I don't go look at those people energetically. And she goes, I think this person is. And I went in and I said, no. And I said, but it was, well, it turned out that after I got off the call with her, I went back into this person's energy. And I didn't. I just went in to see if I could find this person's energy and figure out what the game is. And I started laughing because this is about Trump. I started laughing because a lot of people think he doesn't have a clue what's going on,
Yeah.
or that he doesn't know what the harm way that he's in. He knows exactly what's going on, right? But my point is, it was just kind of interesting, but I had to pull myself back out and scatter the energy because I didn't want anybody coming back out and finding me. So we don't understand how these energies work. Most people
Yep.
don't, but we have to understand that they know where you are. So it could be somebody sending you a psychic attack. Maybe somebody's envious. I like how you talked about putting the energy around your car when you get in your
Uh-huh.
car, right? You put energy, you can put angels on all four corners of your car, underneath, above. You can just put the protection around you. But this is where we're going to start using these tools, because as we're waking up to a higher consciousness, so is the ugliness waking up, and we have to realize that they're going to be hitting us. Why do you feel down today? Maybe it's not you. And that's why I really stress trying to find people, suggesting to people to ask, is this mine or somebody else's? Because just as you said, you're a sweetheart, you really are, right? But you don't see the some of the darkness coming. But my
Right.
point is, but they see the light in you, so they want to take from you. But
It
when you
happens.
sit there and just say, no,
It
I'm
happens
in
to people
my
all the time. Yeah.
right. It happens to a lot of people, right? Because we're confused with being nice. We feel we have to be nice all the time. You can still hold a boundary with yourself, put up your energy protection. It doesn't mean you have to be mean or rude or anything like that, but you can still say no, and
Hmm.
put the whatever it is back, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk a bit about. We were talking about professional ego. So here's the example when people are speaking up about truth. Oh, you got mental illness. Well, who says you get to diagnose me? And I'm watching a lot of the clinical psychologists say, you don't get to diagnose a narcissist. Really? You have to have a piece of paper to diagnose a narcissist. It doesn't mean you call them a narcissist. Maybe they're just not nice people.
Or simply say, like we were talking before this about personalities, I noticed these traits being expressed by this person. And then we don't have to put a label on it. I noticed
Exactly.
this, yeah, this person expresses themselves in this way often. You know, their
Yes.
behaviors, and it doesn't have to be called. You know, we can, you know, then you're like, okay, I didn't diagnose anything. This person's like that. Oh, it also happens to match what some people call a narcissist. Yeah,
Yes. And we are going to come up with new language around this, but the point I was trying to make
yeah,
on that is some people think they're the only people qualified to
yeah,
use a label on somebody else. Doesn't matter if it's mental illness, conspiracy theorist, narcissist, it doesn't matter what it is, right? But they use those labels to give themselves a feeling of superiority. But we're letting that go now, because there's nobody more qualified to be an individual who knows who they are, if you
yeah.
know who you are, right? So that's kind of where I was going with that. But it's really interesting. I'm watching on social media, on Facebook. There's a fellow that I follow from Australia, and he was saying, now it's time for us to start getting in gear. It's time for us to start moving forward. It's time for us to start making the changes that we want to see. So we've asked the people who are in charge to do the right thing. Like when I hear the stories out of Lahaina, when the police
Awful.
barricaded them and
Yeah.
let them die, like this is just disgusting beyond belief. But they're what, paycheck says they have a right to do that. So I'm watching what some of that insanity. But this person, what he put out here, well, he was talking about religion, so I'm not going to go into that side of it. But he said now's the time in Australia and internationally to be hot for the relationship principles of what he calls God. So he says these are things that matter. We've taken interest, right? Corruption matters, fake media manipulation matters, rigged election results matter, treason matters, billions missing matters, child sex abuse matters, domestic violence matters, homelessness matters, freedom of speech matters, democracy matters, business closing matters, justice matters, criminality matters, crime against nations and humanity matter. But what he's saying was pick something that's a natural interest to you. So I speak about things that I care about. That's what I speak about. I don't talk about certain medical procedures. I don't care. I'm not getting it. Nobody I know is getting it. I don't care. There's other people who can look after that. And if I need to know something, I will find somebody I trust to say, what's going on with that? And I will
Mm-hmm.
ask for their opinion, just as you say, you'll ask other people for their opinion on things, providing you trust that person in
Right.
that
Yeah.
regard. They may know and they may not know. Right. So there's so many more things that we can start focusing on while we're waiting for all the insanity to unfold. So it's kind of like when they say, oh, we're going back into the old ways of 2 years ago. We're just saying, no, we're not even talking about that. We're not going to feed that energy. We're going in a different direction. We're going to look at what's wrong in the world and try to change that and see if we can find inroads and find out why is everything so absolutely fast backward, right? Like it's just totally, why is everything intentionally 180 degrees backward? And the reason it's not 45 or 260 degrees is because this way you can tilt your head and see what's going on. We don't have eyes in the back of our head. So while it's happening behind our back, if we're not trained to spot it, that's where they get away with this stuff. But we have to look, we are backward when it comes to medical, we're backward when it comes to the legal, we're backward when it comes to financial. You know, somebody recently did a video and talked about, I think it was 1930, the beginning of the Depression, what a house was worth and what money was worth and
Yeah.
what your salary was worth. And
Yep.
they're saying we've gone backward now in the
We
year
we were
2000.
richer back then than we
Yes.
are now with adjustment.
So
Yeah,
you
I
heard
saw
that one
that
too.
too.
Yeah, so that's really
Wow.
interesting. People are starting to ask questions, and that's all part of the awakening process, is what I'm seeing, that we're asking these questions, right? And the other thing, I need to touch up this list, but the other thing I was talking about was careers and occupations for the future. Everything we do makes us sick. So I sit here and I look at my American friends sometimes and I think, so why is it Canada has a healthcare plan that's all paid for, and everybody wants this healthcare plan that's everybody's got paid for, right? So it's basically it's considered free, but we know nothing is free. Now I look at the Americans and I think they got to pay for their healthcare. But what is the common theme between the two of them? Your healthcare system is the third leading cause of death in the United States, and I think it's the same in Canada. So it doesn't matter if it's paid for or not. Why are we looking at a system that's causing sickness and
Yeah.
death? So my point is, we get caught sometimes in the semantics of things. Oh, you're lucky you're in Canada, everything's paid for. Not really, when it's the same drug that's killing you,
Yeah. And
right?
didn't they legalize suicide?
You know what? Canada is just a cesspool. It is a shithole when it comes to the people. And I know it comes from the top, but medically assisted
Or even
induced
homicide?
death.
I think
Hang
it
on.
was like, yeah, that they're like, well, if we deem that you shouldn't live, then that's okay.
There was a
Something like that I
veteran
read.
there was a veteran who she needed a wheelchair, I think, and a ramp. And they asked her, wouldn't it just be easier if we kill you? Can you imagine? Like, do we honestly think some people don't get off on causing death to other people? But are they in the medical system because they can hide in plain sight? There was a woman recently, I do not know where she was from, but supposedly killed 7 newborn babies. I don't know if she was Canadian or from the UK. So do you think she got the job and trained so she could be in with newborns, so she could kill them and make it look like there was no common denominator? Some of these people are sick. You look at what's happening in Canada with the censorship. You look at what's happening with the medically induced suicide. You look at what's happening, that they can take your kids if you won't transition them. You like, it is just disgusting. You look at what's happening with the police station that's in here, just went in this summer and opened up, and it's behind a berm and you can't see what it is. Like, look what happened with the trucker rally with the horses and knocking the people down. Like, it's just gone to there's a callousness in Canada right now that I think it's been here for quite some time, but people are starting to see it. And even if it's going to be our neighbors to the south that see that something is seriously wrong here,
Mm-hmm.
even the CBDCs, like if they're trying to bring that out, the digital currencies, like everything is wrong.
Yeah.
And when we get these truthers who sit here and tell us to get your popcorn, and the white hats are coming, they are not on the proper Q team. They are on the dark Q team. And I've
Well,
not
just
mentioned
wait,
it.
just wait, just be quiet. Don't
Hurry
say
up and get your
anything.
popcorn and wait.
They've been saying that for years, like, it's going to happen, and you're like, wait a minute, wasn't this supposed to like all not happen? All this but wasn't supposed to happen. Oh yeah, but there was. I'm like, oh, whatever, you know.
So it's
Um,
whatever the people who are on the talk shows, they're the ones who are full of shit. But there is stuff happening behind the scenes. I think it depends on where we go for our information. But they're not going to tell you what they're doing. No, I have no idea what they're doing, right? I'm not going to be able to figure this out, because if we all knew what was going on, the darkness would know what's going on. So
yeah,
anybody out here telling you that, oh, they've got all this figured out in the truther movement, they're lying to you. And there was one woman, she goes by Agent X11. and she took over for this talk show host, right? I don't think I'm going to mention her name, but so for the longest time, she went by agent because that's what they are. They work for the traffickers. Anyways, she told the host and another fellow who's supposedly a survivor that she doesn't like white hats after pretending to be a white hat. She doesn't like white hats because white hats get dirty. I prefer black hats. They tell you to your face if we know what to listen for, but we're seeing the cracks within the truther movement. We're seeing that they're full of shit. And I don't normally like to come out and say that because people have to figure this out on their own. But I have drawn the conclusion that the people who are following them, they're followers. Or if they were going to lead, they would have started leading already. They wouldn't be sitting there watching what's
They're
going
waiting to
on.
be saved.
They would be out there
Waiting to be
making the
saved. Nobody's
changes.
coming to save you. You got to save yourself. You know.
So they're just keeping everybody spinning their wheels. And I'm watching people come and go. And then I'm wondering, how come that person got so much attention so fast? And you realize, oh, you're feeding this person because you're part of the darkness. So you can start to see it all unravel if you look. But like I said, they're the followers. They're not going to be the leaders that are going to go out there and make the changes. So I think if you feel if there's an interest that you've got, something that stirs your heart, something that really makes you feel motivated to do something, those are going to be the people who are going to be the self-starters. It doesn't matter if it's going to be gardening. It doesn't matter if it's going to be maybe some form of construction. It doesn't matter what it's going to be, but they're going to be the self-starters. Maybe they're going to start a school. You know what? Your beautiful president, Donald Trump, you know what he just came out and said?
What?
He wants to give, if he gets reelected, which I don't even know what that all means, but he wants to give $10,000 tax-free for every student, for the parents, that goes into their account, that they can choose what school their child goes to. So what I love about that, it levels the playing field. Any child can go to any school, providing they've got the money that they can pay for it, which this is what he's saying. It also breaks down the barrier. It's not every child, whether you're a religious definition or a skin color, it's every child. So that's a unifier right there. But that's what's going to bring the educators, maybe give them a little bit of a wake-up call, because now they're not going to get carte blanche funding, that they can put whatever nonsensical agenda forward. Like, they've got everything wrong. The science is wrong, the math wrong, English is being programmed and changed. They aren't teaching life skills. They aren't teaching how to be an entrepreneur. They're not teaching anything of value other than how to be a good little sheep. So I think there's a lot of good things that are happening right now. But even if he doesn't, maybe he doesn't get in, maybe whatever happens. But now the idea is out there, is planted, that every child should get $10,000 for the parent to be able to decide what education they get. And this is what I think is going to shake up a lot of the changes. We need to do it on the ground level, but we also need the people at the top need to make good choices for everybody, since they've got the purse strings, right?
Right. And then people can, because most people can't afford private education, and they are forced into the public school system. And the public school system, I don't understand enough, somehow can make these rules without parent input and change what math is and change how, like, but things are getting turned around. I think people are getting fed up. And like you say, things are coming to light. Stuff that's been in the works for years and behind the scenes, like you say, behind the back, has been going on. And now that it's being enacted, people are like, oh, like the people that were like, oh, just be nice. It's okay. We need to be tolerant. Yeah, but tolerant now has been shifted to mandated acceptance or agreement, whether you agree or not. So I like the idea that, parents can say, okay, I don't agree with what's being taught in the public school. I can choose a different school.
I can homeschool. If they had 4 kids, that would be 40,000 a year. One parent could stay home if that's tax free.
Yeah, right. Homeschool.
All kinds of options.
They have over here. They have these schools where people can get together and start a school that's called I forgot what it's called, but satellite, or I forgot what it's called. But anyway, but it provides options for how our young children are being educated and what they're being told is true or not true. And I luckily grew up when 2 + 2 was 4. Now it's like they apparently even say that it's I think they're saying it's racist to mark something wrong if the math problem's wrong. Sometimes it's very confusing. and it doesn't enhance, like we said, being nice is not being kind. Okay. And maybe it's nice to just let someone pass a test that gets it wrong, whose scores are very low,
But
but it's
that's
not
not
kind.
even nice. That's not
It's not
even
kind to that person,
no,
you know?
it's not nice. It's not kind. It's not actual. It's not truthful.
Right.
So, but it doesn't mean that the test is accurate either. I think people are really starting to question everything.
Yeah.
My understanding is some of the kids who are vibrating in school, who are labeled as ADHD and what have you, they know the information they're getting is a lie and it's wrong. So they start vibrating. And then because they're awake, kind of like that video we talked about the cow going to slaughter, they're
Yeah.
awake. They realize they got to shut that kid up so the kid doesn't wake the other people up, the other students up.
Mm-hmm.
I know two people who went to the gifted program here in Ontario. They were sisters. The one doesn't remember. She had 99% comprehension. A kid at 3 years old, she could read something and knew what it meant.
Wow.
Right. So I took her to the lion safari one time and she looks at the sign and goes, trespassers will be eaten. And she
Yeah.
turned and looked at me. We're in the bus. Like it didn't matter. But she knew exactly what it meant. And then another person went and all she remembered was they took a ball and did figure eights, the infinity in front of her eyes to mess them up. But they knew who these bright children were back then. And they
Oh,
took them into this special gifted program and made them not so bright anymore. And this is not an insult or anything like
oh,
that. So the
interesting.
education system, there's nothing that says that their intentions are pure, that they want the best for all of humanity. I think it's
Oh,
about control. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I think it's about control, right?
unfortunately, yeah. And you mentioned that technique of doing this figure eight. Actually, what that does is it puts the brain into it's almost like binaural beats. It's there. There's actually things you can put on your eyes that they use in the military to create state of hypnosis and take you into the deep alpha or theta state, which puts you in a hypnagogic state and very suggestible. So
Isn't that
that's what
interesting?
that's
Yeah.
what this would do to you. So maybe they called it something different, but it was manipulating the brainwave state.
Yeah. And so what gives these people the right to do this? And people are talking about accountability. There's so many levels that we need accountability
Yeah.
on, but when it comes to the human, whether it's just the genome, the psyche, whatever, like there's so many levels of manipulation that people don't even know who they are anymore. And we don't know what's possible. So that's kind of where we're going back with all these changes that they're trying to make, whatever they're going to throw at us right now. While we're sitting here watching the chaos, we're not waking up to our higher potential and what we can actually accomplish. And that's where it's important why we're talking about this today, that we don't get thrown off course by whatever insanity they're throwing at us. So I'm hearing they're going to bring out the we're going to have another war and what have you, right? So they're going to hit us with everything. Go for a walk in nature if you can. Try to do the things that calm you. And it's essential oils. There's essential oils that can calm you. Some of the crystals are absolutely amazing as well, just
That's
to
fun.
ground you, right? So we've got essential oils, we've got crystals, we've got tapping if you need to. You've got nature. Just be outside and just put your feet in the ground if you need to, and just say, ask yourself, am I at risk today? What do I need to do today to protect myself? Do I need to fuel up on something? Do I need to give myself a peace of mind that I have enough supply? What do I need to do? And when we start asking ourselves those kind of questions, I think, then we come back and realize, because one person might be at risk for one thing and somebody else for something else. And the example would be fires in Hawaii. And then I heard the floods in Nevada. Supposedly that was fire first, and then they flooded it, right? Massive rains. I'm told that's a ritual. So I was thinking it was another natural disaster, but I was told that was a
Uh,
ritual, and then they brought the rain in. So lots of things are going to be happening that are going to be true. Some things are not going to be true. Does it matter
yeah.
what it is? It really doesn't matter if it's not around us or if it's not going to affect us. So asking, even in your neighborhood, how are things going? Do I need to worry about something? Is there anything? Is there any alarm bells going off in my body? Because we all have that intuition, but we forget to go back and touch base with it and just see
Yeah.
what's going
Yeah.
on, right? And that's what's made us dumb in some ways. I shouldn't say dumb, but not knowing. How about not
Right.
knowing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Or
we didn't.
not paying attention. And just like you're talking about on our personal energetic level, to be aware, just check in with yourself and say, where am I? What am I feeling? what do I need? Take some breaths, get out in nature, look at the sky. Um, and it's like draw out, pull out and say, okay. Also, though, on the material plane, in the real world, I think awareness and knowing what's been going on so that we aren't blindsided. So, like you say, I was talking about something I hadn't heard about until today. I'm like, well, how did I not hear about this? Just like there was a practice for the pandemic that took place by Gates Foundation, WHO, etc., created a what was it called? Event
Event
201.
201.
Yeah, just like that had happened, and then gee, it was almost like
You mean it just happened again?
well, yeah, somebody I just heard that
Okay.
earlier this year or even last year, there's something about 2025 called something contagion.
Okay.
And I said, I haven't even heard about that. But it was the same players making another practice for a contagion in
So
2025.
some of
I have
them,
not looked it up. It's online. Apparently, people can look it up and watch the whole thing.
so
Uh,
we have to be careful with that because when we observe it with our eyes, we're
mm,
fueling it.
yes.
So it's like the Olympics in 2012, which
Oh,
basically
yeah.
was
That was
playing
gross,
this out.
wasn't it?
I know I don't do sports, right? So I never watched that. But when we watch these things, we fuel it. And especially if we let it get to us
Mm-hmm.
emotionally or create, whether it's a fear, panic, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the
Yep.
idea is if you are watching it, see it for what it is, but you do not consent, you
Yeah, it's
reject
like
it
put
and
that
push it
energy
back.
out and just it's an awareness. And when you brought up Lahaina, again, stuff I wouldn't know. I'm not living in Hawaii, but there are laws that have already been passed
Yes.
that create um, benefit for negative events to go forward, negative energies to exit, have more power. So being aware of what's already happened, what's in the works, so that you aren't blindsided, but also you can prepare and say no, or even step in and say I don't sign up on that. Apparently, Lahaina law had just been passed that allows the government to claim property or dominion over after a natural disaster. Just happened when the new governor took place just earlier this year. And then this natural disaster happens, and now he has the power to. Apparently, they also there was plans for a smart city there.
Totally.
So
I think
yeah,
what's going to start happening is people are going to start looking at their government workers
and
and they're
wake
going to
up.
start figuring out where they live. Because right now it's not a level playing field. They know where everybody else lives. Like even I was talking to somebody about this about schools. The teachers know where the student lives because when you register the student, you have to put down where they're residing. But nobody knows where the teacher lives. And I've got some stuff coming out about this too, right? But and it's not out of threatening. I'm not saying it as a threat. But if you need to sue that teacher, if you need to sue them personally for harm to your child, whether it's psychological damage, if you can prove that what they're doing is illegal and a lot of what they're teaching is, then you need to know where they live to be able to serve those papers, right? But it goes for the board of directors, it goes for the principals, vice principals, like it goes for everybody. But this is what needs to start happening. We need to know where these people live because I think they would think twice about some of the stunts they pull. Right. Again, it's not out of violence. I'm not advocating that in any way, shape, or form. But if you've got to
But
serve them, they won't let you do it on school property. They're not even
oh
letting some parents on school property anymore. So how are you going to find them?
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's so again, it's the awareness of what rules are in place, what rules are being suggested, and then have have the information and then center yourself around it. And it's I don't know how to put it this way. On the real world, on the astral plane, be aware that there's stuff out there that you can put that shield of protection around yourself. And also, we talk a lot about energy and intention, that we can also put out that positive protective energy that no harm comes.
Yes.
Like you say, when you're watching something, if you see something, read something that wants to produce fear,
So,
push it away.
and I agree with that. I agree with that if we're not
Yeah.
in danger. But Lahaina, what I just heard yesterday, where the people were jumping in the water, they released sharks in there. They had
Oh
boats
my
that were
God.
just pulling body parts out. So
Wow.
these people, there's an ugliness out there that they're trying to cause as much chaos as possible. So the people had to jump in the water to avoid the flames on that front street.
Yeah.
And then they release sharks in that water. So when they say release sharks, that's the way I heard it was presented, whether they come out at night. But the people, like, this is just so sooner or later when these laws are passed, one, we have to get ahead of that, because then we have to know what they're
Yes.
planning. But if we can't get ahead of it, should these people be punishable by what means?
There needs to be, hopefully, let's intend
I think
that
it's
there
going to
is a
happen.
comeuppance. Like you say, there's a
Yes,
kinetic energy. I've not just you, I've heard from other people. They just have this feeling that
someone's
the
going to
lid's
get.
gonna come off something this fall. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a prophet, but
But you sense
there,
energy. You sense it as well, right? You can feel it. I
I
did my
think
birthday
people.
reading last month. So till the 11th, I have the Hanged Man upside down. Anything goes, and then to the 10th, and then from the 11th to the 10th of October, I have the Tower. Like, and I when I read that card, I looked at it and I thought, this isn't just about me. This is going to be everything. So I think it's going to be September, October
Yeah,
that the lid's coming off. But again,
yeah.
this is where we practice our own discernment, like you said,
Hmm.
right? And just if it
And
happens,
pay
just
attention to who's telling us what is the truth, and you know, get inside yourself and know the truth. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled again.
yes.
Don't be
Don't accept it.
bullied, right? And just say, hang on there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great place to stop. I think we've been talking for a while, but we hope everybody finds this video helpful, and please share it with other people. Know that things are coming, but we've been waiting for this. We've been practicing for this. We have the skills not to react. We have, well, it's easy for me to say because that doesn't always happen. Sometimes I react, but we have the skills to handle this. But just watch to see the length these people are going to go, because sooner or later we're going to see even more of the sleepers show themselves and show who they really are.
Yeah,
But we need to be not on guard to the point that we're hyper vigilant, but we need to be aware of our surroundings so we know how to protect ourselves. So Desiree, I'm going to share your information in the description box again, and I'll put my information there. And again, if anybody finds this video, please helpful, please share it, hit the like button, and let's be the change we want to see.
that's
Take
right.
good care.